I make my living off the evening news. Just give me something I can use. You absolutely got to love every inch of this. Why is nothing ever where I left it? Were you moving stuff back here, dude? Something got closed. There it is. This is what we're after, right? I think it's this. That's not it.
Atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where how many of you hit an inside the park grand slam when you were 37? Okay, fine, Ty Cobb, but you sit your ass down, you had your video last week, and God bless you, Brett Butler, for being the veteran outfielder whose inexplicable cartoonish misplay of what should have been a one-hop, one-run single enables us to always have the video of Tony Gwynn hitting an inside the park grand slam at the age of 37. And also, goddammit, God bless the idiot in the stands who tried to interfere with a fair ball but failed to make the play because he's a Dodger fan and thus a hopeless, useless dipshit. And with all the God blesses out of the way, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius, temporarily renamed for one night only as Tony Gwynn-a-Palooza, and which also precedes next week's program, which will be temporarily renamed The Night the Host Turns 50 and you get to shove dollar bills in his internet thong. Isn't that exciting? Jim Eagle has even threatened to install a stripper pole, if you can believe it. But before we get to the gwinning, and there will be much gwinning, make no mistake about that, we must first conduct our regular business, and hence, here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the second work week of June 2024. Dateline Brussels, Monday, 10 June. The climate change, zealots, social justice, lunatics, and globalist kleptocrats who have grown quite habituated to being the dominant, nay, hegemonic force in European Union politics in recent decades were dealt a very painful dick punch earlier this week when the EU Parliament elections were pretty much swept all the way from Dublin to Sofia by conservative and center-right candidates. And yes, as you might expect, there was much sky-screaming and rending of garments from the establishment fake news media in a wide variety of countries and a wide variety of languages. To hear them tell it, and you already know this, there are only two types of politician. There's the kind who has all the correct opinions, and there's the kind who's a dangerous right-wing extremist and probably secretly loves Nazis. If you're a centrist, just a middle-of-the-road everyman with an average set of opinions about the world, That means you want to castrate children, ban the internal combustion engine, and make people eat bugs. Anything to the right of that, and you're basically indistinguishable from Mrs. Schickelgruber's little boy. And they describe you with words like firebrand, controversial, that they never, ever apply to people who are on their own team, and it's not difficult to see why a conservative sweep of the MEP elections would cause such paroxysms of sheer white-knuckle terror in the halls of European globalist douchebaggery. Because the way this normally works is, conservatives mostly don't even run for seats in the EU Parliament because only globalist liberals think there should be an EU Parliament in the first place. And everything about the place is run by globalist liberals for the benefit of globalist liberals. The EU Parliament is one of the most magnificent bureaucratic cathedrals that the European globalist left has ever erected to itself. So when people who aren't globalist liberals start running for those seats and then winning them in not insignificant numbers, that can portend nothing but certain doom for the whole rotten institution, don't you think? And if you find yourself asking, wait, what difference does it make if populist conservatives take over a legislative body that only exists to serve the interests of the globalist left? Well, here's the answer, and I'm glad you asked. Because the best of all possible outcomes here is the populist right gaining a sufficient majority that the EU Parliament votes to disband itself. The people who want to prop up this rotten, corrupt edifice, they know that's one possible endgame if this trend should persist unabated, or even quite possibly if it accelerates. And boy, does it scare them shitless, which, in the opinion of this reporter, is a good and proper thing. Dateline, Washington, Tuesday, 11 June. In a story that proves the old axiom, never become such a raging egomaniac that you decide to shoot a documentary about yourself, HBO has provided footage to congressional investigators of Nancy Pelosi casually remarking that, yeah, it totally was her call to not deploy the National Guard to the Capitol on 6 January 2021. Strangely, surprise of all surprises, this particular bit of footage never came to light during the proceedings of the fake January 6th committee, even though that fake committee, its members handpicked by Nancy Pelosi herself, did subpoena other footage from the daughter/filmmaker of this particular HBO thingy, Alexandria Pelosi. Alexandria, I don't know, fuck it, who cares? But the only footage they subpoenaed that time was stuff that made Nancy Pelosi look awesome, and this newest stuff is only becoming public knowledge now due to a more comprehensive subpoena that was issued by the Weaponization Committee. If this shit wasn't actually real, could you ever make it up? Hell no, you could not. And ultimately, does it tell us anything we didn't know already? Not really. Pelosi has claimed all along, falsely, that it was Trump's job to mobilize the National Guard, but that's always been a provable lie. The Speaker of the House is the Commander-in-Chief of the D.C. militia. The President is not. If the President wants to mobilize any National Guard unit, he has to federalize it first. In Washington, D.C., just like in any state, it doesn't work any different in the district than it does in frickin' Wyoming. But then that's not the real question, is it? The real question is, why was the National Guard needed at all? Why wasn't there a less inept response from the Capitol Police on the day in question? And it's a fair question to be sure. And remind me again, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Capitol Police? Oh, that's right. It's also the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Are there lessons to be learned from the events of January 6th? You bet your sweet ass there are. And lesson number one is, our federal district has a really indefensibly stupid system of government that very desperately needs to be changed. Any system that makes Nancy Pelosi responsible for coordinating a coherent and effective law enforcement response is intrinsically flawed in its basic conception. The framers of our Constitution got many, many things right, and that was not one of them. And I am sure that Paul Pelosi would agree. I mean, I've heard of staying home to get hammered, but this is ridiculous. Dateline Brentwood, Wednesday, 12 June. The 30th anniversary of O.J. Simpson killing his ex-wife and her friend passed this week with seemingly nary a mention from anybody in the news media. So maybe they got it all out of their system when the juice kicked the proverbial carton just 6 or 7 weeks ago. And it's too bad, really, because I was so hoping for the guy in his quest to apprehend the real killer. And he never gave up either. Right up until the end, he was searching every golf course and titty bar in all of God's creation trying to find the elusive Colombian drug dealer who did that awful thing. Well, when he wasn't in prison, at any rate, but you know how it goes. And I have no doubt also that Hunter Biden is going to display a similarly dogged determination as he searches to the ends of the earth for the Mexican gangbanger, that dastardly bastard who stole his gun and threw it in the trash dumpster by a school and framed the president's perfectly innocent son for the crime. So what have we learned in the 30 years since O.J. Simpson killed his ex-wife and her friend? Most importantly, we have learned that sometimes the exigencies of social justice politics demand that verdicts in criminal trials sometimes not be connected in any way to the question of whether the defendant actually did the thing, if indeed there ever was a crime at all. And I think Officer Derek Chauvin and President Donald Trump can tell you all about that second one. And the idea that Johnny Cochran ever succeeded in turning Orenthal James Simpson, of all people, into a martyr for the depredations of the LAPD against black Angelinos will always be amazing to those of us who are old enough to remember when that very same O.J. Simpson was widely reviled in the black community for living in a white neighborhood and being married to a white woman and only hanging out with white dudes and being in commercials for products only white people buy. And aren't you impressed? I got through this whole segment without saying that Ron and Nicole died of knife cancer, and I'm pretty pleased with myself. Dateline, Washington, Thursday, 13 June. According to a report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, non-U.S. citizens accounted for 64% of all federal arrests in 2018. In other words, 3 years before Biden and the enemy saboteur Mayorkas threw open the border for anybody who wants to come, so one can only imagine how much bigger that percentage is going to get when and if we ever see the numbers for the succeeding years. But wait, I hear you say. My elected leaders and the people on the TV are always telling me that foreigners commit drastically fewer crimes per capita than citizens do, and only a filthy, no-good MAGA extremist would ever suggest otherwise. Well, yeah, they do say that a lot. Oftentimes it seems more like a reflex action than anything, but first of all, it is a demonstrably false claim. I believe the technical term for it is bald-faced lie, and second of all, it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference even if it were provably true, because seriously, try to walk me through the logic on that one if you can, and with particular regard to when the argument is applied on behalf of illegal aliens, as it often is. Seriously. How do you get from the point A of illegal aliens commit fewer crimes than citizens and lawful immigrants do to the point B of, therefore, we should have open borders forever? Admittedly, I ain't got no fancy book learning, I ain't got no fancy college degree, but I just can't figure out any sort of coherent linear thought process that leads from the one to the other. It's like saying, OJ killed Ron and Nicole, therefore we should get ice cream after dinner. Which is to say, there is no evident relationship between the one thing and the other. It will likely surprise you not at all to learn that that 64% number represents a literal 180-degree flipping of that particular script just in this century, at the start of which, in the year 2000, 63% of federal arrests in the United States were of U.S. citizens. Imagine that, which is a pretty good indicator of just how quickly and completely the open borders crowd has changed the demographic makeup of the country, and not in a good way. And also a good indicator that they are lying, and they know they are lying when they insist the vast majority of the people they are bringing in are honest, upstanding, hard workers just looking for a better life, because clearly, a lot of them are, in fact, scumbag criminal reprobates who came here to prey on Americans. Sometimes the numbers don't lie, and you can't cook the books to say what you want them to say. Your total pool of federal arrestees doesn't go from 63% U.S. born to 64% foreign in 18 years unless somebody is trying really damned hard to make it that way. Dateline Green Bay, Friday, 14 June. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, America's greatest physician, told a sparsely attended gathering of Wisconsin voters this week that the man she is married to is healthy and wise and works hard every day to make life better for the American people. At which point the people in the audience looked at each other in great confusion and said, wait, when did she divorce Joe? What do you think? Should we use the rim shot machine twice in the same roundup? Yeah, I think we probably should. Dr. Jill, whose apparent role in the campaign is to go around saying things Joe should be able to say for himself, but can't because they require stringing more than half a dozen words together, went on to say, quote, Joe isn't one of the most effective presidents of our lives in spite of its age, but because of it. End quote. And I have to say, I totally agree with the first half of that sentence. Joe isn't one of the most effective presidents of our lives. If they cut it off right there, I would sign that memo. And you know, strange.
That's a bad thing that happened. Let me fix that. I'm not actually a robot. I just play one on YouTube. Let's try this again. This time put some stank on it.
Things Joe should be able to say for himself, but can't because they require stringing more than half a dozen words together, went on to say, quote, Joe isn't one of the most effective presidents of our lives in spite of its age, but because of it. End quote. And I have to say, I totally agree with the first half of that sentence. Joe isn't one of the most effective presidents of our lives. If they cut it off right there, I would sign that memo. And you know, strange as it may seem, I think I might actually be inclined to agree with her overarching thesis as well, because it comports pretty nicely, if not on purpose, with what I've been saying all along, that Biden shouldn't get any kind of free pass because his brain has turned into tapioca pudding and he walks into walls and shakes hands with ghosts and says hello to dead people and confuses Egypt with goddamn Mexico. You know why? Because when you ascribe his terrible performance to his advanced age and his diminished mental faculties, you give that age and those faculties entirely more credit than they actually deserve. Because even in the intellectual prime of his life, such as it was, he was still Joe Biden. The guy whose semi-official nickname for 30 plus years was the dumbest guy in the Senate. The guy who Judge Clarence Thomas was looking directly at and talking directly to when he said, quote, from my standpoint as a black American, this is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate, rather than hung from a tree. And Joe Biden just sat there and smirked like it was the funniest thing he ever heard in his life. That is the guy who says you ain't black if you don't vote for him. That's the guy who has the unbelievable gall to accuse his opponent of being the racist in the race, which is a hell of a bold position to take when you are the last living segregationist senator and the only one ever accused of high-tech lynching by a Supreme Court designate. At least in 1991, he was capable of going to the bathroom by himself rather than on himself. And back to Dr. Jill, America's greatest night nurse. It's hard not to notice that when she tries to con people into thinking it's a good idea to return this semi-vegetative cadaver to office for another 4 years, she uses the same terms you use when your great-uncle just had his third stroke and he's recovered slightly better than people expected. Oh, he's so sharp, he's so energetic, I can barely keep up with him. Now let's be honest here. Nobody says that about another person who actually means those words. Those words are a polite way of saying, yeah, we all know Grandpa is going home to Jesus soon. It's just nice that he is semi-lucid for a little bit longer. And hey, if that's what you're looking for in your commander-in-chief, all I can say is, please burn your voter registration card and never attempt to participate in another election ever again. And the rest of us will prosper immeasurably from your absence and your example. Please do make a note of it. And here is the part that you all eagerly look forward to when the roundup ends, and I stop talking. That's the week that was, may it rest in peace, and with that, I transfer command to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the Fleet Admiral of the large furry hominid navy, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the blue flag that I found somewhere online. How you doing? This is the Blast Radius. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about goblins, like real in real life, like actual police reports of goblins. We're going to talk about some national heroes. We got a baseball Hall of Famer who died. We're going to do a send out on that. We have Lawrence Knight in, who's brought a little something for us to check out a little bit later. And why don't we go ahead and bring him up so we can have that little conversation while we're here? What is up, bud?
What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All
Glad
right,
to
so
be here.
what did you decide to open with? Do you have a monologue, an aside? Do you want to just tell them who you are, is, and what you do, and what it is, and who and where you do it?
Well, let me first start saying that those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Lawrence Knight. I host a Friday night show with my co-host Samuel the Infamous and Know Me Without You. It's called Abyssal Musings, and we are often graced by the presence of Caucasian Sasquatch himself. And so I thought, hey, the man is always there at the drop of a dime when I ask. This time around, I wanted to come and see what he's all about. And yes, I did bring a topic that I thought was utterly ridiculous. So it came to my attention the other day.
Is it as ridiculous as Zimbabwe goblins?
That probably makes more sense than the article I'm about to mention.
I am riveted.
Zimbabwe goblins I could deal with. But for many of you don't know, I grew up in Los Angeles. I wasn't born there, but I grew up in Los Angeles. I lived there for decades. And one of the main things that we had to deal with was back in the 1990s was people cruising and getting into fights and, lowriders and everything, parking and taking up entire boulevards. And so the police would put up signs to try to deter that. They would drive through the city and, try to do a show of force to make sure that we minorities, so to speak, weren't sitting outside taking up certain streets and just basically someone trying to have a good time on the weekends. The other day, a news report came across my phone, apparently, and I've never heard of this, but the article says anti-gay no U-turn signs come down in LA's LGBTQ friendly Silver Lake. Now, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard because number one, all of California is LGBTQ friendly. I mean, unless you've been crawling under a rock nationwide, I think everybody knows that. But the fact that they are on camera cheering about some no U-turn signs being taken down, which to my knowledge, up until 3 days ago, I'd never heard of those signs have anything to do with the alphabet community. Those U-turn signs.
This is news to me as well.
Yeah.
What is the connection? Have you discovered a connection? Did you investigate?
Did the article contain an explanation about why this is homophobic?
Are you autistic enough to ask these questions on your own?
Well, there is an explanation. You see, the signs were up because most streets, if there's no U-turn for a good reason, because the streets have a history of accidents because of the way the streets were built. So somebody comes out, turns the corner, somebody does a U-turn, and bam, now you've got an incident. But members of this community all of a sudden has decided that the no U-turn signs and the no cruising signs were specifically aimed at them because according to them, back in the early 1990s, gay men would travail down the streets of Silver Lake in the hunt of other male love. And so in response to that, the city put up no cruising signs and no U-turn signs. Now, I lived a few miles away from Silver Lake, and I can tell you right now, those signs had nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the old Shakespeare line. Methinks thou dost protest too much.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Correct.
I'm of the opinion that there's probably no connection between the U-turns, and I think it's probably the width of the street that matters more than anything else. How large of a lane does it have? How much space do you have to do a U-turn? And can a large construction vehicle do one? Because that's really what matters.
Correct. Because for those of you who have never been to California, Silver Lake is a very, very small area and it's connected to downtown LA, which especially during the early 1990s was the area of and still is the area of a lot of criminal activity. A lot. So those signs damn sure have nothing to do with them. How it became these signs are racist against us 27 years after the fact. I don't know where they're getting this. And then they say apparently there was a vote to take the signs down back in 2011, and all but 9 were taken down. Like the 9 that weren't taken down were not taken down because, as you said, Sasquatch, it's because the streets are narrow. Silver Lake is not a large area, and those
I
streets.
mean, okay. I'm just gonna throw this out there from the everyman reasonable normie perspective. If I see a sign that says no U-turns, my first assumption is to think there's probably a good reason why they don't want people to make U-turns.
Exactly.
We are trying to suppress and persecute the homosexual community. Wouldn't occur to me, but maybe I'm just not socially conscious enough.
Can I give you a weird little funny about Georgia?
Sure.
We don't do U-turns. Yeah. U-turns are statewide no. That's not something we do, right?
Really?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Also in Ohio.
In
there's certain cities, yeah.
When they
did not know that.
Turn around, they teach you to do a 3-point turn at any access to anything anywhere. So it doesn't matter if it's a cattle path that turns off, as long as you stop and back up in between your turn. Just do not do the whippy.
Right.
California would cease to exist within 24 hours if you did that here.
Right.
We have right turn on red there.
Right. And think about it too. Even if those signs, what sense would that make? No cruising, no U-turn. So if you're driving through Silver Lake is a clear pathway through to downtown. How can you not drive through it? And if there's no U-turn, what's to stop me from doing a 3-point turn or just making a left or a right and going 1 block over and then coming back around? No cruising. All I have to do is pull up, stop for a minute, and then get back to what I'm doing. It's not cruising. So what sense did any of this make? But
how can you tell the difference between someone who's cruising and someone who's lost?
I'm glad you asked that, because we've had a similar thing here in quite a few of the San Diego suburbs, where 20, 25, 30 years ago, they put up a bunch of no cruising signs. And in the last 5 minutes, it's become controversial because now everybody wants to say that being anti-cruising is racist, because everything has to be racist, because obviously. So yeah, we make controversies out of pretty much anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but does it not appear as though the people who see racism everywhere might be the most racist people?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah, and it might be when you view the entire world through one singular prism, that everything you interpret might comport with the prism that you're looking through. And it's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And
so if you go looking for racism everywhere, Shazam, you always manage to find it.
Oh yeah. And then you have your professional race baiters, where racism equals dollars. It's profitable for them to say drinking milk is racist, or playing hopscotch is racist, or waking up on the left side of the bed. Hell, going to sleep is racist. Because when you close your eyes, all you're seeing is black. So that means that you're racist.
Yeah, we actually just heard that this last week. I saw where some woke idiot psychologist was saying that non-straight people have processed time differently. They experience clocks differently than people who are sexually normative. And who knew? It's almost like there's people with political agendas working in the sciences who want to justify their jobs existing.
Exactly.
I should stop being a conspiracy theorist, though. I'll stop.
Well, it makes sense to me. It's kind of like construction crews going out and clogging up the freeways, and then they have a cop car to pull up so that you can't cuss them out without getting arrested, and they're just sitting out there, just wasting time. on your.
Oh yeah,
Fake-
wasn't there a Michael Douglas movie about that?
Yep, sure was falling down.
Falling down. I love that picture. God, that picture just gets more and more relevant, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a while. I should give it a rewatch. I actually saw where someone had written a retrospective review of
There
it
it
just in the last
is.
couple of weeks, and I made a. Oh, can we talk about the fact that you played the wrong intro?
Man, don't make me come over there. I'll sit right here and be lonely.
I'm just saying that much of the stuff in the first paragraph of my monologue was based on the stuff that was in the intro. So
I do apologize. How did I do it wrong?
Well,
I had an intro that was all Tony Gwynn stuff.
Well, in Sasquatch's defense, he had just got through watching Falling Down, and he decided that the true intro was not economically viable.
I'll give you that.
I have.
It's not the end of the world. When I put the roundup up, I will simply append the correct intro onto it, and all will be right with the world.
All right. Yeah. No. I've completely screwed the pooch. Oh, by the way, the sound problem that we had at the beginning. That's what happens when my electronic sound mixer crashes.
I thought the playback, well, except for the big fiasco in the middle, I thought generally speaking it came through better than it did last week.
So what you're saying is that your sound mixer is racist, basically.
Clearly,
it clearly doesn't like
down to your racist sound mixer.
Yep,
your Confederate racist sound mixer.
Well, I mean, I had a suspicion because it is called banana.
What kind? Green or yellow? That's racist. I'm sorry. That's racist.
Oh no, there was about a minute and a half in the middle. It takes about 10 seconds for me to restart that thing. And it's not really that big of a deal. It's just like things like that happen sometimes when it happens at a particularly critical instance. And I hate it. I hate it. The technical issues are part of the show. All right.
Indeed,
so
because we are professionals here, ladies and gentlemen.
U-turns, baby. Why? Why? I don't get it. How is this a thing?
You have a brain. That's why you don't get it.
Oh, I didn't iron that wrinkle out. Okay. You want to try to help me iron the wrinkle out? No? Good.
I'd be racist if I did.
Are you sure?
Yeah, look at the midnight sign. Yeah, see, that's basically directed at me. Midnight. Okay. Yeah, that's racist.
I can't. I mean, I'm not in a position to really disagree with you, sir.
Yeah, and see how the sign is. It's a mixture of white and black, so it's obviously aimed at what some call mulatto.
Can I try one?
Sure, go ahead.
So you see how the white surrounds all the black U-turn? This is this is the oppression of the white race over the black U-turn.
Hey, pretty much is telling us to go back to Africa.
We're saying any arrow that signifies black progress in a forward direction has to be canceled out.
Well, it's ingenious.
That's really good, dude. That is amazing. You're from California, aren't you?
It's ingenious though because it's the white community telling blacks to go back to Africa so that we could get jumped by our own people, put back in cages, and resold back to America.
Yes.
That last step.
Make a U-turn and go back to sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
That's what that means.
Right. So, Captain Curmudgeon, as your legal Sasquatch, I want to say when he says this, it means one thing. When you say it, it means a totally different thing.
Still makes sense, still fact, but there are those
it even says midnight, which signifies that dark things are bad and unfavorable and to be avoided.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, babe. That is beautiful. So I don't have any visuals other than like a really ragamuffin type. So a couple of years ago, when I was patrolling these here YouTube streets, right? I came across an individual that, to my knowledge, has never appeared on camera as a person. He claims he is a goblin. Now, you may not believe him, but I like to fancy myself as being somewhat of a humorous fellow, and from time to time, what just happened? Why? I lost the wrong one. It doesn't make any sense. Go away. You go away.
Best producer in the business, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm an absolute freak. I just deuced out the wrong freaking windows all. Right. So now we're back on the freaking roll we were supposed to be under the. There we go. Mr. Tildar Hobblesquatch, folks. So this gentleman has been appearing in this form for at least the last 10 years that I can research online. I went back, I figured out what his real name was, and then I searched up on that some. And as far as I can determine, he has been doing this thing long enough that I can't verify that he never was that thing, right? So this gentleman purports himself to be goblin.
He looks like the Ben Mendelsohn character from Captain Marvel.
He looks like a goblin to me, bro. Lawrence, is this a goblin?
First thing that popped into my head.
He looks like a goblin.
All right, so let me tell you what I did to this guy. When I got him backstage, I started telling jokes, and I got him tickled and giggling real hard. And what I was trying to do was get his makeup to fail, right? Because there's clearly prosthetics involved. But in 45 minutes of him running snot out of his nose, laughing at me, he never broke character, not once. So I've determined that he's a goblin. And now, according to Zimbabwe police and the parliament, Zimbabwe is being terrorized by goblins in the night.
It kind of wrecks the illusion for me that his arms and hands are a completely different shade of gray from his head, but I'll just leave it at that.
Well, you know what? I can help them. I can help Zimbabwe with this. If they're truly worried about this man and any possible goblins, I know exactly how to get rid of them. What you do is you get some of their best engineers, and then what you do is have them go up and down Zimbabwe and put up no U-turn signs and no cruising signs. And add the word
from California.
Right.
Cheap.
So you can't put midnight because he's green. So, I guess you put, during spring or something, whenever the trees and things, sprout up. But they just put no U-turn signs everywhere and put the colors in green and white. Off. Maybe they'll go back to where they went.
Crazy enough, it just might work. What's up, North Alabama Cryptid? Welcome in, bud. So I just want to repeat what I said previously. The Parliament of Zimbabwe, the actual ruling body of the nation, has decided that they may have to make laws to get rid of their goblin problem. Primarily,
no, I think I've got that same Kefia.
Primarily because the police are refusing to go out at night and patrol the streets because there's goblins out there attacking them. I'm not joking. I'm dead serious. I could only find one freaking source for the story. Actually, there's two sources, but they contradicted each other. It's like one said that the parliament was looking into passing laws to make it illegal for a cop to not patrol his patrol, and that the cops were using union pressure to try to pass a law saying that it would be illegal to make them patrol goblin infested areas, which means that at some point in time, Zimbabwe is going to have to do some kind of study to determine how many goblins are in what areas.
Well, my question is too, if they're so worried about interacting, or having run-ins with goblins, why not have them watch Lord of the Rings first so they'll know what to do?
And the Hobbit trilogy, for that matter, which is even more goblin heavy than the first trilogy.
Oh wow! Don't get me started on The Hobbit, man. The Hobbit is what happens when you have way too much money to make 3 movies on a book that barely makes a movie itself.
Poor Ian McKellen almost killed himself on screen in the middle of a freaking scene.
Right? Jesus. Sorry.
He's just sitting there in the middle of this green room all by himself going, what the fuck? This is... I became an actor for this? What the hell?
Right, read it. Well, see, that's the thing is like no one reads anymore. No one reads anymore. It's sad because that means vast segments of things that have happened. Like one of my fondest memories of high school was the fact that my small town has all kinds of records from before the Civil War that still exist, and you can still go accessing them by going to the little historic library over here and just flipping through the old newspapers.
And that's fantastic. In my town, you can only do that back to like 1890.
Dude, like I don't even know how far this stuff goes back. It goes back to the founding of the town at least. And the town was more or less here before that. And so we're talking like in 1700s, maybe. I mean, it's a long time. We in Georgia.
Oh, yeah, it's well in excess of 2.5 centuries.
So I'm when I was growing up, we had to move that particular library from the building it was in to another building and then back. And I was involved in both transitions of documents in that case. I went through and found arrest records for my family back 90 years.
Wow.
And damn near every one of my antecedents had spent at least 48 hours in lockup locally. All of them.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually just having a conversation with a coworker the other day about how rapidly that's changed in terms of how much information your descendants are going to be able to know about their ancestors. Because if you or me, if we want to know about our great grandfather or our great great grandfather, what do we have? We've got maybe a few photographs. We've got some public records. If we're lucky, there's a few letters that he wrote that might exist, and we've got a gravestone, and that's pretty much it. But now, in the time we're living in, we are all leaving behind ample records of exactly who the hell we were and exactly what the hell we thought about the issues of our day. And, you know, my descendants and your descendants will have no trouble figuring out who we were if they decide they want to know, because look at the record we're leaving behind. And I think that's awesome.
Well, should there occur something along the lines of a coronal mass ejection in the right angle, all of our recent history will vanish like the second fucking dark age.
Caucasian Sasquatch, ladies and gentlemen, he goes straight to the coronal mass ejection because, of course, he does.
I'm just saying, if something goes down to take down our internet-based history, we will lose absolutely everything that has occurred in the last 20 years.
At least
that isn't stored on physical media somewhere.
Right.
See, the issue with this is the electromagnetic effects are strong enough in some cases to corrupt data on solid state devices. So it doesn't necessarily make it safe that it's a pre-freaking World War II model. That doesn't protect it because that shit blows out freaking vacuum tubes just as easily as it does computer chips. It's just that you need more computer chips. You fixing a vacuum tube, I mean, you can't really fix them, but you can make more.
Like that chat message. Google has ruined learning like the calculator ruined math.
Right?
Everybody's
Google everything. Jesus Christ, man. Listen, I was on a panel the other night with Gen X Jeff. Like this has been about a month ago. And we were having a conversation about the source of authority and whether, if you're a religious person, it could be the church. If you're a collectivist type, it might be the state. If you're a diehard patriot, it might be the feds, that kind of stuff. And we asked him what the purpose of the EPA was, and his response was to immediately Google it. And we weren't looking for the definition of the EPA. We were just looking for, like, why do you think the EPA exists? What's your take on your experience in your life? And his response was to ask Chat GPT and then read
And
it.
I often have the exact same experience asking people similar questions. Like I want to know what they think this thing is, and they just go copy paste something from Wikipedia. And who are you helping?
So I got a question for you. You sent me two things in that email. One of them I couldn't make do anything. One of them I was able to play. The other one I thought was like a thumbnail or something. What is the other thing?
You want me to play it from over here? I can play it from over here.
If you wish, because I couldn't. Like I said, I spent my time on the bit that I played. It's the other thing I was supposed to play, right? The government, anytime they can use crisis to further an agenda, make pointy sticks illegal.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's floating that legislation somewhere.
Bring it out. Whoosh. See, that's
There
how
it
that
is.
was, folks. We're trying to fix stuff and make it go away. Is it going away now? Okay, it's gone. Cool, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
gone. I made it go away.
All right. We did the thing. The thing's been done. Check it out. What are we going to do about these damn goblins, dude? What if they come to America? We've already got one here. Seriously, though. The U-turn signs, I just don't buy it, man. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They're wanting more carnage is what they want. They want the people trying to turn around in the road to come across the people who are in a hurry to get the Starbucks and have a fist fight.
I think if you have to look that hard to find homophobia, you're living in the least homophobic society in world history.
Right. So, Andy Pickle makes an excellent point here. Reminds me of Steve Martin's character from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels wearing an eye patch and using a fork with a cork on the tines as he stabs himself repeatedly in the eye patch. That is one of
You don't want to get the genital cuff, do you, Ruprecht? Oh, I can eat Dirty Rotten Scoundrels all night long, dude.
Have you ever seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Lawrence?
Oh, years ago.
Okay, you need to watch it again. The first time I saw it, I thought it was stupid, and then one night I was like, I got stood up by this chick, and a friend of mine come over and brought Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and I was like, oh God, this is gonna fucking. And he's like, no, man, check it out. It's actually funnier than you think. You just gotta like pay attention. And so I sat there on freaking vodka and watched the freaking movie, and then we watched My Blue Heaven, which might be his best role ever.
And the San Diego Padres are in that movie.
No.
True, you know it.
All right. So what approach would you take to try to deal with the carnage that's going to take place because of this? Do you just not enforce the U-turn thing, or do you just let like nature take its course and survival of the fittest type activity?
I think we should invent an injectable pharmaceutical anti-goblin death ray, and we should tell them all it's just a helpful vaccine.
Exactly.
That's not a bad idea.
There's already a template for it.
It's an elegant solution.
It's true.
Final one. The final solution. I'm just saying. Andy's pointed out another excellent film, Let It Ride. I really need to do a deep dive into Let It Ride, because there's all right. So there's a lot of contextual things that go on in that movie that show that the individual in question is not actually experiencing this, but is rather experiencing a concussion from the impact he received in the first 10 seconds of the film. This man is in the hospital and dreaming because of the shit that goes on in that movie. It's great. I love it. Sorry. Pretty sure I could ruin any film. Wow. So you
couldn't ruin The Acolyte.
No.
No. Okay, all right, we're doing it. It's happening right now. I'm gonna say it out loud. I'm saying it out loud. Listen to me. I hear what you're saying. The acting was bad. The casting was terrible. The writing is on a third grade level. I'm pretty sure AI laid out the scenes, and absolutely no one cares anywhere in the world that there's not a man of a man anywhere in the film, except perhaps carrying the camera. But there is one scene in this series that has completely redeemed it, in my opinion. There is a scene where the protagonist, the antagonist of this film, we don't know if she's good or bad or whatever, but she is strong, she is black, she has dreads, and she is a ninja, Jedi, witch, lesbian.
And she don't need no man for nothing.
Men were never even mentioned in her training. That's not an acknowledgement of things that exist. That's not how these people reproduce, but we'll get to that in a minute. However,
the way they reproduce is by being lesbian communist space witches who scissor babies into existence with their lesbian scissor sex. Sorry.
We will get to that in a moment. I've got a theory on that as well. But
I wish so badly I was making that up, but alas, I am not.
When this young lady decides she wants to get vengeance, her first idea is to stab a Jedi, and it works. So she goes to the next Jedi who's been taking a nap for the past 10 years, and she attacks him 19 ways to Sunday without weapons, and then fails to wake him up with weapons. And so her absolute best hit on this dude didn't even disturb his nap. So the old white guy didn't even notice the strong independent woman, what showed up and tried to, not need nothing from no man. But you know what she needed
Well,
from that man?
but he kind of has to stay asleep and not
Oh,
speaking because otherwise a man might have too many speaking lines. A white man.
but what she needed from that man to succeed at her mission was for him to drink the poison himself. He comes out, picks up the vial, and shoots it down like it's the best tasting little Mai Tai he's ever had, and kills him on the spot, graveyard dead.
Wow.
So, you know, beyond the fact that the story is a basic Sam Slade novel, but instead of them saving the twin reveal for like episode 4 or 5, 6, they did it right out the freaking gate and blew the fact that they're twins. So there's none of that game of who's who and what's going on and why doesn't she remember and all that silly shit. All of that's out the window because in the opening freaking scene you find out that there's twins. And
yeah,
so
pro tip: don't concede your involuntary your biggest twist when you're doing your pre-release interviews because it kind of deadens the impact. Is all I'm saying.
In the first episode, you are made aware that they were twins.
Yes.
So
I wasn't even paying attention, and I knew that much.
Right. And one twin is good and one twin is evil because one tries to kill the butterfly and the other one tries to save it. And that's all you need to know about these girls.
Yes.
That's it. That's the extent of their character development.
And they both have exactly the same hairstyle from age 8 until age 25.
Right? What if she'd have showed up back dressed up like a bad bitch? You know what I'm saying? Come walking in with some horse's ass hanging off her head.
Heaven forbid anybody in a galaxy far, far away should have any sort of individual visual identity over the course of 16 years. We can't have that. Yeah. Our audience isn't a bunch of Rhodes Scholars, for Christ's sake.
Rap stamp and a face tattoo. Well, that'd be a much better movie. Probably the wrong platform, though. But listen, what I'm getting at is they took good, evil. Now, it goes further than this because they are deconstructing the previous franchise from the inside out. Anakin was unique because as far as anyone was able to determine, he was a virgin birth. There was no father. There was a man who visited. There was a man who visited and paid her for her time, but never touched her. He just sat in the room quietly and then left.
Talk about masculine energy. You can knock a bitch up just by sitting in a room with her.
That's what Joe Cool does, but we're not getting into that right now. I'm pretty sure he can knock up white women through the internet, but I can't prove it. I won't allow him on paddle when my wife's in the room. Anyway, so that's pretty rough, right? So you've got these two little girls and you have exactly the same circumstance, except the difference here is it's two women and they were created by the Force, but not by any mastermind or collective, consciousness or no, it was through the love of two women that these two girls, good and evil, were created, sort of
by lesbian space witches,
automatically
them into existence.
And so after and they're born, of course, they're Force sensitive. Now, these lesbian space witches, and this is important, are not Night Sisters.
Really?
Because Night Sisters are unabashedly evil.
And I don't even know what a Night Sister is.
They are the original Zabrak coven of Force users from the planet Zabrak. They are what happened when a handful of Jedi crashed 25,000 years on the surface of Zabrak, and they found a handful of Zabrak that were Force sensitive and started a Jedi Academy, except of course Zabrak are evil. It's completely soaked in the dark side, and they corrupted every bit of it into a new non-Sith dark
Sounds like
side.
It might develop into a fairly serious situation.
Well, they basically do the same thing that Jedi do, except they use the disorder and chaos as their source of power. So like anger, rage, strong emotions are their source, and they're almost all of them are female. There are a very few Night Brothers, but these are all warrior caste, mindless fucking killing machines, and they're badass.
Well, the force is female after all.
On Zabrak, you're correct. It's the Night Sisters, and they basically occupy the space of the Wills in the Outer Realms and the Jedi Council in Coruscant. So they are the regulating body of the Force on that planet or in that star system. For
but
the
ultimately,
most part,
aren't we dancing around the pertinent question? Never mind, I lost it. Go ahead.
So yeah, young lady can't wake up an old guy who's taking a floating nap, and he has to kill himself. That's pretty much the most white knight thing I've ever seen happen. It was the most amazing bit of like white guilt ever. Because as far as I can tell, he's the only fully white guy in the entire franchise at the moment.
And look at the haircut they made him have.
That too. They gave him Luke Skywalker's original haircut on someone that's not.
And tell him who the actor is.
Who is that dude? I can't remember. I know
it's Tommen Baratheon from Game of Thrones. The last time we saw him, he was taking a header out a window after his wife got killed in the Sept of Baelor by his mother.
Good choice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have any particular problem with the actual arrangement of these shows. I believe that a qualified editor with talent could take what has been filmed and make a decent show out of it. I don't know why they didn't, because I feel like
who is the show for? I mean, unless you are in the exact demographic that Leslie Headland is in, like middle-aged, square-faced, dog-ugly, lesbian, former Harvey Weinstein personal assistant. Who else but a person like that would ever be inclined to watch this show and actually enjoy it for non-ironic purposes?
I hear this. I hear you. It's a fanfic by a non-fan. I got you. It was probably actually supposed to be in the Matrix universe, but she didn't get that green light. And that would make way more sense than what I'm seeing now.
Crouching Matrix, Hidden Jedi. Sorry.
Oh, God, you did it this time. It was your fault this time. So there are some scenes, and I wish to be completely fair. There are some scenes. The fight scenes are actually pretty clean. They're too clean, to be honest. They are obviously heavily choreographed and green screened and auto tracked and AI. There's a handful of special effects that aren't so terribly special, but even those special effects that aren't so special kind of lend credence to the idea that these are Force users. They're doing things that are just a little bit more than most normal people, until someone pulls a knife and shanks that bitch. Apparently that is beyond the Force.
Yeah, you just distract her for half a second and Jedi Master can be killed by a dagger in the heart. Who knew?
Right? You know how Boba Fett handled Jedis? Really big fucking explosions.
He sure did, didn't he?
God, you just reminded me that Book of Boba Fett show exists and how terrible it was.
That wasn't Boba Fett. I'm talking about the real Boba Fett from Legends.
Yeah, I know, but I try and put that show out of my mind, and each time his name comes up, I'm reminded that it exists.
The scene where in the second movie in Attack of the Clones, where Obi-Wan's following the ship that has Boba Fett and his dad in it, and he's dropping those mines behind him, and he goes to an asteroid belt to drop mines behind him to prevent anyone from following him.
Oh yeah, what are they called? Seismic charges.
Yeah, that is a very Boba Fett scene. The Book of Boba Fett does not have that type of a feel to it at all. Boba Fett's primary defense against Jedi was when he knew Jedi were around, he stopped planning. He learned to react, right? And this sounds like it wouldn't work, except for the fact that since you don't know what you might do, the Force can't help the Jedi predict it. And so he had the ability to be within arm's reach of a Jedi and pull off an attack without there being a Force warning, as like telescoped or telegraphed as a normal person who was planning to do it.
To answer Andy Pickle's question that's on the screen right now, I think because in terms of the current Disney Star Wars canon, that character doesn't exist since they nuked the expanded universe.
That is true. With Luke Skywalker dying lone and lonely and having never reproduced because he's a bad white man.
Yes,
who should just get out of the way of the female force. True.
Stand aside and let the ladies handle it.
They could even make Mara Jade black and it wouldn't be a problem. I wouldn't even bat an eye. If it was written well and done well, I would not have a problem with it.
I wouldn't have a problem with
it. I don't think anybody minds a race swap as long as it's in service of something that doesn't suck.
Well, look, I wouldn't mind if there wasn't an uproar when it's done on the other end. And that's what I noticed. They have no problem swapping out a white character for a black character, but as soon as it's done the other way around, there's a huge uproar over it. So I would be fine with it as long as, when it's done in the other end, keep your mouth shut. Just like you did.
Let's see everyone keep their mouths shut when they announce Jake Gyllenhaal as Martin Luther King Jr.
Have either of y'all ever read, dude, that took a second to soak in. Have either of y'all ever heard of the Stainless Steel Rat series by Harry Harrison?
No.
This is the wrong place, but I'll answer that question anyway, Andy. So he says, now a question for Squatch. Is Mara Jade a less deadly, less cool version of the Stainless Steel Rat's wife? Son, Angel was an absolute fucking disaster. Mara was capable of functioning in a society. Angel was the detriment of any location she had to be in. She is a psychotic parasite on a genetic level. When you put her, even after her reconditioning, she destroyed the town's economics she was in by getting into trading oranges. When on Stainless Steel Rat's Revenge, when they left her alone without being monitored with just the brain, the re-education camp stuff in place, she didn't break any of the re-education, but she did destroy the economic system of the local valley. And she did it because that's what she does. Whereas Mara Jade was trained like a ninja and became a force-sensitive assassin and was the hand of the Emperor, was trained not only by the Emperor in a couple of cases, but by Darth Vader as well, who was one of the only people who ever met Mara Jade. He's the one who trained her in force.
Remind me, was it a book that she was introduced in?
She was first introduced, I believe, in as an ancillary character in Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the original sequel.
Okay, I got you. Yeah,
right.
The book that was supposed to be the low budget sequel to the first picture.
Right. She was just an individual in the room. It was later when Legends got in that character appearance was retconned into being the hand of the Emperor. Mara Jade, who was Mara Jade. There were apparently several of these types of people, and they had one of my, I think it was in Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Are you sure? She wasn't named Mara.
Controversy.
She didn't take the name Mara. I can't remember the name she used, but she was the earliest reference to a red-headed individual in Star Wars at all. Mara's the most famous redhead, and after that there were a handful of other references like Corin Horn after coming back from. Let's not get into this. We're splitting fucking hairs over here, bro.
The one thing I know about, the one thing I always remember about Splinter of the Mind's Eye is when Luke smacks the shit out of Leia when she starts getting too mouthy.
Or was it the Thrawn trilogy? I bet it was Heir to the Emperor. I bet that's where Mara Jade makes her first appearance, because it was the other chick. Was
I think
the
I've
one
I
on the
think I've read Heir to the Empire like way
Heir to the
back.
Empire is excellent. Heir to the Empire by that whole series by Timothy Zahn is the most fantastic book series I have ever laid my eyes on. I regularly go back and read it again just because it's such
the first thing Kathy Kennedy did when she became Lucasfilm CEO was to kill it.
Dude,
hey, it's no longer canon. I'm killing it dead.
Do you realize that Talon Card might be hands down one of the greatest characters ever written into Star Wars, and she just pretends it doesn't exist? Thrawn himself, yet again, another absolute type A character, a master class in creation by Timothy Zahn, destroyed by making him a blue soy boy. There's a description of Thrawn where he meets with damn it, I can't remember the two guys' name. It was one of them was the dude who was doing the shadow and raid attacks on the Empire all through the Civil War, right, until the fall of the Empire. And he comes Ibis. Anyway,
got me.
It's him and another one of the remnant Republic holdouts that were like near the core over there. And these two guys meet up with Thrawn, and they are the two biggest dicks in the galaxy that are not the Empire, right? When these guys show up places, everybody pretends they don't know what the Empire is because they bring that much force to the table, and they're together. They're together and they're on the same page about how we've got to deal with this new Imperial threat from Thrawn. And Thrawn's response was to show up in person and have a conversation with them, explaining that there's really no reason for us to fight. But if we were to fight, I would take all of your ships and all of your crews alive. and they believed him because he had just took the libraries and the references from all the minutes of the Jedi. They just downloaded the entire galaxy's database and then left. They just showed up, took everything, and left. But there's so much more to it. There's a bunch. The Yuuzhan Vong series was also really cool. I think it would have been much better if Disney had simply taken the Yuuzhan Vong and just had that happen like right on the tail end of starting the Republic, because the Republic would have been perfect segue into the galactic Confederation that it became later. I'm sorry, I may have read far too many Star Wars books.
Yeah, I'm way far out of my depth at this point.
But consider this: if they had taken the end of say the Rise of Skywalker, right? We get to the end of Rise of Skywalker, that whole thing goes down. It's utter fucking trash. Everyone hates it. And then you roll into this organic battle against non-existence in the Force enemies that the Jedi don't have the upper hand on, right? This is worse than a robot enemy, because a robot enemy actually has a little bit of ripple in the Force, whereas the Yuuzhan Vong simply are not a part of it. They're a void in the Force, and it takes 4 or 5 books in that series before the Jedi start figuring out that you can see the holes in the Force, much like you see dark spots against the stars and know they're ships. It's a similar sort of thing. But that whole process, you have the Darth Caedius arc, which is kind of what they did with Rise of Skywalker, but not really, because there are actually 3 kids involved in this. And you have Jaina, who becomes the Sword of the Jedi. She marries or hooks up with Isu Biblis. Anyway, and he invented the clawcraft based off of the Imperial TIE fighter with shields and a hyperdrive. So he basically made the TIE fighter equivalent to the X-wing, but more maneuverable. So yeah, no, there's a whole bunch. Soon, that was his name. Soon. Yeah, they totally got rid of the Solo twins. The Chewie sacrifice, dude. How do you kill Chewbacca? Timothy Zahn killed. Was it Timothy Zahn? It might have been the other guy, Luciano. One of those boys killed Chewbacca, and there was no huge public outcry from the fans because it was the bossest shit on earth. They hit him with a fucking moon.
Wow.
If I gotta go, that's how I want to go.
That is the way to go out if you're gonna go.
Well, he saved Anakin, Leia's second son.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right. No, it might have been the first son. That might have been Ben's, because there's this weird transposition of the story arc of the emo goth dude that did Rise of Skywalker. What was his name? I fucking hate that guy. I like him as an actor. I hate that role.
Didn't she have a son named Jason Solo?
Yeah, Jason Solo was the one who became Darth Caedius and took over basically right where Thrawn left off. This is sort of after these messages will be right. That's how he came in. And I kind of find it weird that they used a whole lot of the imagery that was used in the Legends material about Darth Caedius and all of this. But then they completely just screw over the punchline on it. The fact that he wasn't gothy. He had a reason for what he was doing, and you don't find out until the very end that the reason was the Yuuzhan Vong were coming, and he was trying to make everything strong enough to survive against that. You know, so Darth Caedius was evil for the greater good, in his opinion. Because you need some hard times, because we really gonna be needing some great men, right? Okay. What's the you got a thing you want to do with the Gwyneth?
Well, I had way more than 13 minutes of stuff I was going to say, but I guess I might as well just work with what I've got.
We'll do that as part of the talk out, man. It'll work. Check this out. We'll even do it this way. Watch this. We'll do it the cool way.
I had already started talking. Shouldn't I just keep talking?
Well, yeah, I guess so. But I'm trying to get you some actual freaking footage up over here, and my computer's kind of locking up on me. So yeah, you just go ahead and start talking, bro, and I'll shut the fuck up. How about that?
Tony Gwynn passed away 10 years ago today, and really, in some ways, it's only been in this past week, preparing for this program, that I have begun to process my grief, because I, like a lot of people around here, especially men my age, really still haven't accepted that that's a thing that happened. Because when you lose a childhood hero, especially a man, one of the few men who actually earns that title, it's a difficult thing to process. I think I should go, in the time I have remaining, I should go to two places. I should cover first the one personal interaction that I had with the man, which was actually in a professional capacity and not a fan capacity. It's 1992. It's All-Star Weekend. I'm writing for a paper called the Times Advocate. It's just turning into the North County Times. I can't remember which name it had at that particular week, 30 whatever years ago it was, but it's the number 2 newspaper in a one newspaper town, let's put it that way. And all I've done up until that point, while writing for the paper, is high school and college sports. They think I've done a fairly good job. The All-Star game happens to be in San Diego that year in 1992, and just as a way of giving me a pat on the head and saying, "Attaboy," they say, let's send you down there on All-Star Weekend, and you can do a little sidebar story for the day of the game and what have you. And they say, well, you got any ideas? What's your angle? And I said, just give me Tony Gwynn. and they get Tony Gwynn. But this is a weird thing because normally when you're in the local media, if you want Tony Gwynn for 10 minutes, you just call up the Padres press office and you say, I want Tony Gwynn for 10 minutes. But this is All-Star weekend. So as soon as the calendar hits Saturday, everything goes through MLB. But still, local media get certain priorities as far as talking to their own players. And the Padres, amazingly, they've got 4 starters on the All-Star team that year. They've got Gwynn, Tony Fernandez, Fred McGriff, and Gary Sheffield. So it's before noon on the All-Star Saturday. The game is on Tuesday, and they give me 10 minutes of Tony Gwynn at about 11:50 a.m., which is it's All-Star Saturday. It's the very beginning of All-Star weekend. Most of the players aren't even in town yet because they just played a game Friday night. So it's before everything starts really kicking off big time. It's my first time ever being in a major league dugout. I'm meeting the man who is obviously my childhood hero for the last 10 years, but I'm here in a professional capacity, so I can't just go to pieces and act like a fanboy. So obviously I conduct myself like a professional journalist. I don't really go in with a plan of questions I want to ask him because I never really like to do interviews that way, because when you do interviews that way, it just makes the subject kind of throw up a wall and start being guarded like it's not a conversation. And we just sat there and I started mentioning things from, I think I wanted to demonstrate to him that I was somebody with a deep knowledge of the last 10 years of the history of the club since he's been here. And that was really what we spent most of the time talking about, was just little random things and people, obscure figures from San Diego Padres history. One of whom was, and I've heard this guy's name come up a few different times, a guy named Mario Ramirez, a guy you've probably never heard of before. He was like a very incredibly light hitting utility middle infielder for whose career was probably less than half a decade, but from Tony Gwynn, Bruce Bochy, and Tim Flannery, all of whom were on the Padres teams in the 82, 83, 84 period. I heard all 3 of those guys say that Mario Ramirez is the greatest guy I ever met in my life. If I heard Tim Flannery say, if Mario Ramirez showed up on my doorstep right now and didn't have a place to live, he could stay forever. And that's what my column wound up being about on I think it was the Monday, the day before the All-Star game. It was just about how Tony Gwynn reminiscing on, maybe some of his more obscure teammates that he's had throughout the last 10 years and what influence they had on him. And I'd like to read that story. I wonder if there's any possible way I could find it. Probably not, but anyway, at that point in his career, he's 10 years in. He certainly is not a Hall of Famer yet. He is a perennial All-Star. He's got 4 batting titles, so he's a very, very good player who's been able to keep it up for 10 years or so by that point. And that's all he is. And he's kind of settled into a groove the last few years where he hits between 310 and 320 and kind of puts up the same stats every year. But here's another interesting thing that happens on that same weekend in 1992. Ted Williams comes home that weekend. Ted Williams out of San Diego, California. He comes home that weekend not just because the All-Star game is in San Diego, but also because the city is naming a street after him, Ted Williams Parkway, which sits at the intersection of I-15 South and I-56 West, which you've probably seen it if you've ever driven on the freeways in San Diego before. They have a little conversation, All-Star Weekend 92, and they strike up a bit of a friendship. And, when Ted Williams thinks you're not doing something correctly, Ted Williams will tell you so, goddammit. And Ted Williams starts trying to impress upon Tony Gwynn what he is doing with the inside pitch. Tony Gwynn's normal practice when he gets a pitch inside is to inside out it the opposite field, hit it over the shortstop for a single. And Ted Williams says, God damn it, why aren't you hitting that pitch over the fence? Just turn on the damn pitch and hit it over the fucking fence. What do you think you're doing? You're doing the more difficult thing just because it's the more difficult thing, when doing the easy thing would give you better numbers and a better legacy. And they strike up a friendship, and it's sometimes an argumentative friendship, because every time they talk, Ted Williams says, "I've been watching you. You're still inside out in that fucking inside pitch and hitting the singles over the shortstop. Why won't you grow a fucking set of testicles and start hitting that goddamn pitch over the wall?" Finally, in about 1994, Gwynn decides, you know what? Maybe Ted Williams is right. Maybe I should start turning on the inside pitch and hitting it over the fucking fence. And between 94 and 97, his age 33 through 37 seasons, he has the best 5-year period of his career. And it's not particularly close. He wins the batting title every year. He's even in the absolute height of the steroid era, when everybody is juiced up and he is not. He has the best stretch that he has ever had in a 20-year first ballot Hall of Fame career, and without doing any steroids, without just, eating a nice T-bone steak every night. And that's another thing about Tony Gwynn. You never heard a story about Tony Gwynn getting into a scuffle with any frickin' photographer outside a nightclub some Saturday night. You know why? Because Tony Gwynn didn't go to nightclubs. He went home to his wife and kids. I saw an interview with Alicia Gwynn one time, Mrs. Tony Gwynn, and they're sitting together on the couch, and the interviewer asks her, "What would you say about Tony as a husband?" She looks over at him. She looks back at the interviewer. She says, "He likes it when his dinner's ready when he gets home." Not sure what else to say. And that's what a boring man and a good hero Tony Gwynn was. And that association with Ted Williams, it culminates at the All-Star game in 1999. You might want to roll that video right now if you have it handy. It's
Try.
so Gwynn has just completed this magnificent 5-year stretch, age 33 through 37. 99 is actually the last All-Star game he ever winds up getting voted into, and it's in Boston, and it's also Ted Williams's last ever really high-profile public appearance. And Ted Williams comes out in his little golf cart and drives around the perimeter of the field and stops by the mound, and all the All-Stars, both leagues, they all want to be around Ted Williams, and none of this is planned, but it just goes on forever and ever and ever. And Tony Gwynn winds up being one of the guys who, because Ted calls him over, obviously, because he wants to talk about what's gone on since the last time they spoke. He says, how's your knee injury doing? I've been watching you turn on that inside pitch. I'm real proud of you that you finally stopped being a dumbass and started listening to me when I was telling you what to do, because it's good when people listen to Ted Williams. Probably words you should live by. And eventually they're on the clock. They're running late for when Ted Williams is supposed to throw out the first pitch, and they got to start the game. And so they start clearing all the All-Stars away from the mound. And the guy that winds up propping him up at the end while he throws the pitch is Tony Gwynn, and that's the culmination of their association. And the other thing is, I'm glad I got a chance to play the intro, the special intro I made, because the first thing I led off with was Tony Gwynn's home run that he hit off David Wells in Game 1 of the '98 World Series. Top tank off the facade, Yankee Stadium. It was the defining hit of his entire career, and it was the culmination of him doing the thing that Ted Williams had started telling him to do 6 or 7 years before. And in doing the thing that Ted Williams advised him to do, he turned himself from a really good player with a handful of batting titles into the best hitter since World War II, a first ballot Hall of Famer with 97.8% of the vote. I was wearing this very same hat when he was inducted into the Hall that day, and I was wearing this jersey right here. And let's watch the rest of this thing play out, because it's just starting to get good.
You want some sound with that?
Yeah.
Can't we just end with this?
Yeah, we might as well. That's fine with me. It's a good ending. And yes, his idiot son made him wear a hat with some stupid website name on it instead of a Red Sox cap.
Gotta grab that bag.
That's how undignified on the one hand Ted Williams' last public appearance was. But I guess that's less undignified than having your disembodied head be still floating in a freezer of liquid nitrogen to this very day, so I digress.
Elvis ain't dead. He just went home. He'll be back.
See, here comes Tony. Ted wants to know how his leg is. And they start talking hitting. And right now, Ted's saying, "Yeah, I saw that homer you hit in the World Series. You did just what I said. Good job, son."
You know what I told Boxing that? I dramatically that.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the players on the field, it's requested, please, that the all century players.
Yeah, the PA announcer is trying to get the players to disperse now.
The legends of this game, today's stars, crowding around one of the greatest to ever play the game of baseball and one of the greatest to ever serve his country. We try as hard as we can and hope that this moment translates on television. The feelings that we're getting here at Fenway Park at this 70th Midsummer Classic. Just a moment, Ted Williams
My man, right here. You're gonna be everybody.
will throw out tonight's ceremonial first pitch.
Sorry I missed your party,
Joe,
but
Bob, do you find yourself asking, can't
Sorry,
this
I
go
missed
on
your party.
Nope, in particular?
I personally hope it does because I don't know if I can speak. What a moment.
Watch somebody like Mike Piazza, who Ted Williams
all right.
told at a very young age when he was 16, when he was introduced to him, that you will be a major leaguer after seeing his swing. Ted Williams was right, and here tonight, Mike Piazza on hand to help celebrate one of the game's greatest players of all time. He is a star among stars, and on a night like this, that's saying a lot.
Whacking Mark McGuire on the left shoulder.
And he just keeps sitting in that golf cart until he's good and ready. All right, I'm ready to get up now.
Ted Williams will throw out tonight's ceremonial first pitch. He will throw it to Carlton Fisk.
I know.
Nothing about this was planned. They just handed Tony Gwynn the baseball and told him go help Ted do the thing.
With help from Tony Gwynn.
Where is he? He went in. Oh, all right.
Where is he? Good job.
And he gets it there on the fly.
Congratulations to Ted Williams. Congratulations to the game of baseball. Here tonight, a wonderful July night in Boston.
And you would not believe how excited Tony Gwynn was about all that. He spent the rest of his life telling people about how cool that was, and he had absolutely no idea it was going to happen. And
I'm not exactly a huge baseball person at all. I did follow a bit of Toby Maguire. That's not right. Maguire's early career. Mark Maguire. Thank you. I was fixing to say the wrong shit. Be roasted for it forever. But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he basically walk away from that conversation and just start ringing fieldies? Just straight up start jacking them out of the freaking park every time he got in front of the base.
It was the several years before then when he had started really taking to heart what Williams was trying to tell him and putting it into practice, and had the best 5-year stretch of his career in his late 30s. And how many Hall of Famers can you say that about?
That's true, man. Like, I'm not a big fan of asterisks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's been the Blast Radius. We've did the discussion. Lawrence, if you want, we can roll out on you doing whatever you want to do in a rollout. Do you ever do the raining flaming cobras bit? You want to try that or something? You have anything?
Well, folks, it could always be worse. It could be raining flaming cobras.
Amen, sister. That would be horrendous.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?